All right, so you know the drill by now, right?
Yeah.
You've given us a stack of documents about Sona
Yeah.
financial reports, press releases, even a transcript of their latest earnings call.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like someone's really trying to get a handle on this company and what they're up to.
Indeed. And a fascinating company it is to explore. What I find really intriguing about Sona is their position right at the crossroads of two huge global trends. The global shift towards electric vehicles
Right.
and that relentless drive for smarter, more efficient car technology. And with this stack of materials that you've provided,
Yeah.
we have a real insider's view of how they're navigating this exciting but challenging landscape.
Okay, so before we get too deep into the weeds here,
Yeah.
let's start with the basics. For anyone who might not be familiar, what does Sona actually do?
Well, at their core, they make precision components for cars and other vehicles, specializing in driveline and motor technologies.
Uh-huh.
Think of them as the unsung heroes, really the engineers making sure everything runs smoothly behind the scenes.
Okay.
But what makes them particularly relevant to your deep dive here is their laser focus on electric vehicles.
Got it. That's where it gets really interesting, right? Their business is clearly evolving rapidly to really embrace the EV revolution.
Absolutely. And their latest financials tell quite a story.
Okay, let's talk numbers then. It sounds like their recent performance is a little bit of a mixed bag. Revenue is up, but margins are down. Help us break that down a little.
Yeah, well, it's important to understand the context here. The global economy isn't exactly doing them any favors right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing weakened demand in Europe, which is impacting their differential gear sales.
Yeah.
They also have a strong presence in the U.S. off-highway vehicle market.
Right?
And that segment has seen some softening as well.
Okay, so those external factors are definitely putting pressure on their profitability.
Exactly. And then you layer on top of that the issue of strategic inventory adjustments by their customers in North America. So essentially, their clients are ordering less right now, which has also impacted Sona margins.
Okay, so that explains the downtick in margins. But I'm also seeing some pretty impressive numbers on the EV side of their business.
Yes.
Like their revenue growth there seems to be defying gravity.
You're reading it right. Their EV revenue is absolutely skyrocketing, up a whopping 48% year over year in the last quarter alone.
Wow.
And for the first 9 months of this fiscal year, that number jumps to a staggering 52% increase.
Okay.
It now represents a solid 39% chunk of their total sales.
That is incredible growth.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, what's fueling that outperformance? Are they just riding the general EV wave, or are they doing something special to capture more market share?
It's definitely more than just riding the wave. They've got a few key things going for them. For starters, they've been very strategic in securing new contracts,
Right.
like that recent deal to supply differential assemblies for a major Indian original equipment manufacturer,
Oh.
or OEM as they're known in the industry.
Oh.
That deal alone added a significant 3 billion rupees to their order book.
Okay, so that's one specific win we can point to. But it sounds like there's more to the story.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Their overall net order book has swelled to a massive 232 billion rupees.
Wow.
And here's the kicker. A full 76% of that is coming from EV programs.
Really?
That tells you they're not just dipping their toes in the EV water.
Right.
They are diving headfirst.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
And to take that analogy even further, it seems like they're not just diving in, they're actively shaping the pool that they're swimming in.
Exactly. Their strategic priorities make it crystal clear that they're not content with just being a parts supplier.
Uh-huh.
They want to be at the forefront of innovation in the EV space.
So let's dive into those priorities. Electrification is clearly a big one,
Mhm.
but what else are they focusing on?
Well, they're also pursuing a multi-pronged approach that includes diversification
Okay.
and global expansion.
Hmm.
Their acquisition of Novelic, a
Mhm.
company specializing in radar sensor technology, is a prime example of this diversification strategy.
Hold on, radar sensor technology.
Yeah.
It's like we need to unpack that a little bit.
Sure. Think about all the features that you see in modern cars today. Things like blind spot detection, adaptive cruise control, even automatic emergency braking.
Right.
Those all rely on radar sensors to see the world around the car.
Okay.
And Novelic happens to be a leader in this technology.
So they're buying into a company that already has expertise in this crucial area.
Right.
That's a smart move, especially as EVs continue to pack in more and more of those advanced safety features.
Right. And it goes beyond just the basic safety features. They're also investing in some truly cutting-edge technology like active suspension.
Okay, active suspension.
Right.
That sounds super cool.
Yeah.
What exactly is that, and why is Sona so excited about it?
Well, imagine a car that can actually anticipate bumps and dips in the road and adjust the suspension in real time.
Really?
That's essentially what active suspension does, resulting in the smoothest ride imaginable.
Wow.
And Sona Comstar's investment in a company called Clear Motion, which develops this technology, is a clear signal that they're thinking long term.
So how does that work? Do they have some magic crystal ball that predicts potholes?
Not quite a crystal ball, but close, close. ClearMotion system uses a network of sensors and sophisticated algorithms to analyze the road surface ahead and predict upcoming bumps.
Okay.
And then, using Sona Comstar's electric motors and controllers, the suspension adjusts instantaneously to counteract those bumps.
And they even included a video in their investor presentation to showcase this technology in action.
Right.
That's impressive. You can really see the potential there.
Exactly. And it's not just a fancy tech demo either. It's already a reality. ClearMotion's active suspension is actually being used in the Neo ET9, which is a high-end electric car in China.
Wow. So this isn't some pie-in-the-sky future tech. It's actually happening now.
It is. And the market potential is enormous.
Yeah.
If we just focus on the premium car segment, we're talking about a potential market worth $14 billion. And as the technology matures and becomes more affordable, it could trickle down to higher volume car segments, making that market even bigger. And Sona Comstar, as both an investor and a supplier to ClearMotion, is incredibly well positioned to capitalize on this.
I can see why they're so bullish on this technology.
Okay.
It feels like one of those game changers that could really transform the in-car experience for everyone.
It's about more than just smooth rides, though. It's about fundamentally changing how we think about cars. If your vehicle can handle those bumps and vibrations for you, it opens up a whole new world of possibilities inside the cabin.
Interesting.
Imagine a more comfortable, luxurious, and even productive environment within the car.
Okay, so we've got EV components, this mind-blowing active suspension technology.
Yeah.
What other innovations are they pursuing?
Well, they've also developed something called zone monitoring sensors, which are designed to enhance safety in industrial settings.
Okay.
Imagine a factory floor with robots and heavy machinery operating. These sensors can detect when people are getting too close to dangerous equipment, helping to prevent accidents.
That makes a lot of sense, especially with all the increasing automation we're seeing in factories these days.
Exactly. It's a smart move by Sona Comstar, leveraging their sensor expertise and tapping into a whole new market beyond just automobiles.
Okay, so they're clearly not afraid to branch out. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about their global expansion plans. How are they spreading their wings internationally?
Well, they're taking a very strategic approach,
Yeah.
aiming to serve customers worldwide. They already have a strong presence in India, North America, and Europe,
Okay.
but they're not stopping there.
And it looks like they're big believers in the power of local manufacturing, right?
Absolutely. Their investor presentation includes a handy map highlighting their current footprint and planned expansions.
I'm looking at that right now.
They're strategically setting up manufacturing facilities closer to their clients,
Yeah.
which helps reduce their reliance on imports and allows them to adapt to regional demands more effectively.
Okay, so I've got the map pulled up. We're seeing 11 manufacturing plants and 4 R&D centers across India, the U.S., Mexico, and China. They're also building a brand new plant in Mexico.
Yes. And that Mexico plant is going to play a key role in their North American strategy. Initially, it'll focus on serving the local Mexican market, but it also positions them well to navigate potential trade tensions and tariffs that could arise in the future.
Right. Having that local production capacity could be a huge advantage in the current geopolitical climate.
Hmm.
Now, speaking of interesting markets, they also have a presence in China,
Yes.
which is the world's largest car market, but also incredibly competitive. What are their thoughts on cracking that nut?
They're approaching China with a mix of ambition and caution. It's a complex market with fierce competition and unique challenges, like navigating their fragmented supply chain, local regulations, and concerns around intellectual property.
So it's not a market for the faint of heart,
Definitely not. But they also know they can't ignore such a massive opportunity.
especially as EV adoption continues to accelerate there.
Right. They've already dipped their toes in the water with a motor plant there, specifically focused on suspension motors for EVs.
Okay, so they're taking a measured approach, learning as they go. It'll be interesting to see how their China strategy evolves over time.
It will.
Yeah.
And their approach reflects a broader theme in their global expansion.
Yeah.
They're learning from their experiences in different markets and adapting their strategies accordingly. It's a smart way to mitigate risk and maximize their chances of success.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground on Sona Comstar's strengths and strategic moves. They're clearly a company on the move, making big bets on the future of mobility. But let's be real. No company is without its challenges and risks. Let's shift gears a bit and explore some of the headwinds they're facing.
Okay.
What are the potential storm clouds on the horizon?
Well, the weakening demand in Europe and the US that we discussed earlier is definitely a top concern.
Yeah.
It's already impacting their sales of some core products, and there's no clear indication of when those markets might rebound.
Yeah, that uncertainty can be tough to navigate.
Right.
And the transcript from their earnings call mentioned specific softness in the off-highway and commercial vehicle segments,
Uh-huh.
which is affecting their differential gear sales.
Right. And then, of course, there are the potential trade tensions we discussed earlier, particularly their exposure to the U.S. market. Tariffs and trade disputes could disrupt their business,
Yeah.
especially given the current political climate. It's a risk they're acutely aware of.
But they're trying to get ahead of that with strategic moves like expanding their production capacity in Mexico.
Precisely. They're not just sitting back and hoping for the best. They're
Yeah.
taking proactive steps to mitigate these risks.
So it's all about managing uncertainty and making calculated bets.
It is.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, I want to take a step back and connect this back to you, the listener. Why should you care about all of this?
That's a great question.
What's the relevance of this information beyond just the world of car parts?
Sona Comstar's story isn't just about one company. It's a window into the future of mobility,
Okay.
a future that's going to impact all of us, whether we're car enthusiasts or not.
So what are some of the bigger takeaways here?
Well, firstly, Sona Comstar's success in the EV market highlights just how rapidly this sector is growing and the opportunities that exist for companies that can innovate and adapt. It also underscores the importance of paying attention to these trends, even if you're not directly invested in the auto industry.
Right. This shift towards EVs is going to have ripple effects throughout the entire economy, from the companies that supply the components to the ones that build the charging infrastructure. And as consumers, we're all going to be affected by this,
Yeah.
whether it's through the vehicles we drive, the transportation options available to us, or even the cost of energy.
You're absolutely right. So even if you're not planning to buy stock in Sona Comstar tomorrow, their journey offers valuable insights into this evolving landscape of transportation and the forces that are shaping it.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork here in part one. We've explored Sona Comstar's business, their aggressive push into the electric vehicle market, and their efforts to diversify their tech and expand globally. We've also touched on some of the challenges they're facing, but we've only scratched the surface. Join us in part two, where we'll delve deeper into the complexities of the EV market and how Sona Comstar is navigating this exciting yet uncertain terrain.
Welcome back. In part one, we got a pretty good sense of who Sona Comstar is, what they do, and some of the big trends they're riding. But the electric vehicle market is a beast in itself,
Yeah.
with its own kind of twists and turns. I'm curious, what are some of the key dynamics and trends that Sona Comstar really needs to navigate in this space?
You're spot on. The EV market is incredibly dynamic and fast-paced.
Yeah.
You have new players jumping in with aggressive strategies, especially in China.
Right.
Meanwhile, established automakers are ramping up their own EV offerings.
Yeah.
And the technology itself is evolving at warp speed.
So for Sona Comstar to succeed, they need to be incredibly nimble, always adapting to the shifting demands and those innovation cycles.
It's almost like they need to be playing this high-stakes game of chess, always anticipating, the next move.
It is a great analogy. And just like in chess,
Yeah.
Sona Comstar can't afford to just chase every shiny object that comes along.
Right.
They need to be smart about choosing their partners, picking the right technologies to back, and being very strategic about which markets they focus on. Spreading themselves too thin could be disastrous.
And some of their choices, like investing in Clear Motion, seem to indicate a focus on those technologies that have the potential to become, industry standards.
Exactly. In a market that's still in its early stages,
Yeah.
with so many competing platforms and technologies, that's a crucial strategy. They need to bet on the solutions that will have staying power and align with their core expertise.
And geographically, it seems like they're not putting all their eggs in one basket either. They seem acutely aware of the risks tied to relying too heavily on any one market, especially with all the geopolitical uncertainty we talked about.
That's a key observation. Their multi-regional approach, with an emphasis on building manufacturing capabilities locally,
Yeah.
is a smart way to both diversify and hedge against potential disruptions. It's also a clear sign of their commitment to effectively serving customers around the world.
Now, beyond the market dynamics and the competition, what other factors are crucial for Sona Comstar to consider?
Well, the ever-changing regulatory landscape is a big one.
Right.
Governments worldwide are enacting policies to incentivize EV adoption,
Mm-hmm.
but these policies are constantly evolving.
Right.
So Sona Comstar needs to stay ahead of the curve, ensuring their products and technologies meet the latest standards in every market they serve.
That sounds like a major compliance headache.
It can be, but it's a necessary one. And it's not just about playing by the current rules, it's about anticipating what the rules might be tomorrow and being ready for those shifts.
Right.
For example, some countries are setting these aggressive targets to completely phase out gasoline-powered vehicles within a certain time frame.
Wow.
Sona Comstar needs to be prepared for those kinds of dramatic changes and ensure they benefit from them.
So it's not just market trends they need to watch. It's also how government policies are directly shaping the trajectory of this entire sector,
Exactly.
which creates both opportunities and challenges for companies like Sona Comstar.
You nailed it. And those policies can be drastically different from one country to another, adding yet another layer of complexity to Sona Comstar's global expansion plans. They need to be very aware of the nuances of each market and tailor their strategies accordingly.
So do they need a crystal ball to predict how these regulations will evolve?
Maybe not a crystal ball, but they definitely need a deep understanding of the political and economic forces at play in each market.
Mm-hmm.
Staying informed and adaptable is essential.
Okay, so market dynamics regulations. What about the consumers themselves? What trends are you seeing in consumer demand that could impact Sona Comstar?
Well, consumer preferences are a major driving force behind innovation in this market.
I bet.
People want EVs that can go further on a single charge faster, and of course are affordable. But it's not just about the basics.
Right.
They're also looking for those advanced features that really elevate that driving experience. Features like the active suspension technology we talked about earlier. Sona Comstar needs to stay attuned to these desires and make sure their products and technologies are meeting those expectations.
And I imagine it's not just about the car itself, right? It's about that entire ecosystem that surrounds it.
You're absolutely right. Things like charging infrastructure are critical for broader EV adoption. People need to be able to charge their vehicles easily and conveniently. Sona Comstar needs to be thinking about how their technologies can integrate with this wider EV ecosystem.
Okay.
Things like charging networks, battery technologies, and smart grid solutions.
It's almost like this delicate, interconnected web of dependencies.
It is, and that really highlights the importance of collaboration across the entire industry. Sona Comstar can't go it alone here.
Right.
They need to work hand in hand with automakers, tech providers, infrastructure developers, and even governments to really create a seamless and successful transition to an electric future.
So we've got this fast-paced, evolving market, a complex regulatory landscape shifting consumer preferences, and the need for strategic partnerships. What else should we have on our radar when it comes to Sona Comstar and the world of EVs?
One area that's attracting a lot of buzz is autonomous driving technologies.
Oh, yeah. Self-driving cars.
Exactly. As these vehicles become more commonplace,
Right.
they'll require an entirely new set of sensors, software, and control systems. And with Sona Comstar's expertise in precision engineering and sensor technologies, they could be well positioned to play a significant role in this emerging space.
That's fascinating. And their recent acquisition of Novelic and their work on those zone monitoring sensors shows they're already kind of dipping their toes into the world of advanced sensors. Is this a sign of things to come?
It's definitely possible. The lines between traditional car parts and cutting-edge technologies are blurring.
Yeah.
And Sona Comstar seems to be embracing that convergence. Their investments in radar sensors, active suspension systems, and even industrial safety sensors all point to a company that's willing to explore new avenues for growth.
It's like they're the kid in school who was good at everything and just kept trying new things.
That's a great way to put it. They're not afraid to experiment and push the boundaries of what's possible.
Yeah.
And that kind of mindset is essential for any company that wants to thrive in this rapidly evolving world of mobility.
Oh, I was sensing a but coming.
Haha. You know me too well. But, and this is a crucial but, they need to be careful not to overextend themselves. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of these new opportunities, but that can lead to a lack of focus and diluted resources.
Yeah.
Sona Comstar needs to strike a balance between exploring these new frontiers and staying true to their core competencies.
It's that age-old dilemma, right? For any growing company. How do you balance the allure of innovation with the need to stay grounded in your core business?
It's a delicate dance, and the right answer probably varies from one company to the next, depending on their individual circumstances, their strengths, and their risk tolerance.
Right.
But it's a question that Sona Comstar needs to be asking themselves constantly,
Yeah.
as does any company trying to navigate such a dynamic market.
And it's a question we'll keep in mind as we wrap up our deep dive into Sona Comstar in Part 3, where we'll be taking a much closer look at their financial performance and exploring some of those key questions that investors should be asking. See you soon. Okay, so we've covered, a lot of ground on Sona Comstar's strategy, their big bets on the future of mobility and, this dynamic landscape they're operating in. But now it's time to put on our investor hats
Yes.
and really scrutinize, those financials. We've got their reports, their earnings call transcript right here.
Yeah.
See what story the numbers tell.
Excellent point. Numbers often reveal insights that even the most eloquent words can't quite capture.
Exactly. And, one thing that immediately jumps out at me is their impressive revenue growth,
Yeah.
particularly in the EV segment. We already talked about, that 48% year-over-year jump last quarter and that remarkable 52% surge over the first 9 months of the fiscal year. That's a clear sign they're effectively grabbing market share in this,
Yeah.
high growth area.
You're absolutely right to focus on that. It is one of the most compelling aspects of their recent performance.
But I also noticed that their overall profitability dipped a bit this past quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Their EBITDA margin, which for our listeners who might not be finance wizards, is basically a measure of a company's profitability.
Right.
It's down.
Yeah.
They attributed this to some macroeconomic headwinds and, those inventory adjustments we talked about earlier. Should this raise any red flags for investors?
It's definitely something to consider, but I wouldn't jump to any conclusions just yet. Sometimes it's important to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Rather than getting fixated on, short-term fluctuations, even with those challenges, their 9-month EBITDA, and that's after adjusting for things like stock-based compensation, still grew by a respectable 15%.
So they're still making money even with that dip in margins.
Precisely. And remember, they're making significant investments in new technologies and global expansion.
Yeah.
These investments might impact their profitability in the short term, but if they play their cards, right,
Right.
these could translate into even stronger growth and profitability down the road.
It's that classic balancing act, so many companies face. The tension between growth and profitability, spend money now to build for the future, even if it means taking a hit on current earnings. But it's a gamble, right?
Absolutely. And that's where the true skill of investing comes in, assessing the potential return on those investments.
Yeah.
Investors need to weigh that short-term pain against the long-term gain and make a judgment call on whether they believe in the company's vision and their ability to execute.
So what are some key questions that investors should be asking when they're evaluating Sona Comstar? What should they be scrutinizing?
Well, one crucial question is how sustainable is their EV revenue growth, really?
Yeah.
Are they winning contracts based on rock-bottom prices, or do they have a true technological edge that will allow them to maintain healthy margins as competition heats up?
Right. Anyone can slash prices to win business, but that's not a long-term strategy.
Exactly.
And their investments in things like, active suspension and radar sensor technology seem to indicate they're not just aiming to be the cheapest supplier on the block.
Exactly. They're aiming for differentiation. Another key question revolves around their global expansion. Can they effectively manage this growth? Entering new markets, especially complex ones like China, is fraught with challenges.
For sure.
So investors need to assess whether Sona Comstar has the right team, the right strategies, and the right risk management processes in place to navigate these complexities and come out on top.
Their focus on local manufacturing and, partnerships with local players does seem like a smart approach to minimizing some of those risks.
I agree. But investors should also keep a close eye on their execution. Are they hitting their milestones?
Right.
Are they keeping costs under control? Are they forging those strong relationships with key customers and partners in each market? These are all critical factors that will ultimately determine their long-term success.
Now, another question that pops into my mind is how they plan to finance all this growth.
Yeah.
They recently raised a considerable sum through a qualified institutional placement, or QIP for short. Essentially, they sold shares to institutional investors to raise capital.
Right.
They used this to pay down some debt and invest in new facilities. But will they need to tap the capital markets again anytime soon?
That's a really important question. Right now, their balance sheet looks pretty solid,
Okay.
but their ambitious growth plans will demand substantial capital expenditures.
Right.
So investors need to carefully examine their cash flow statements and debt levels to really understand their financial flexibility. Can they fund these ambitions without putting their financial stability at risk?
And speaking of ambitions,
Mhm.
let's talk about, their recent acquisition of the railway equipment division from Escorts Kubota Limited.
Yes.
This move, takes them into a completely new sector and really broadens their potential market. It's a bold move, but also adds, a whole new layer of complexity to their business.
It's definitely a gamble, but it's a calculated one based on the enormous potential of the Indian railway market.
Right.
It's a sector undergoing a massive modernization, and Sona Comstar is betting they can leverage their engineering and manufacturing prowess to capitalize on this opportunity. It will be crucial for investors to assess whether this diversification strategy makes sense and if Sona Comstar truly has the bandwidth and expertise to make it a success.
It's almost like they're transforming into a mini conglomerate.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see how they integrate this new business and, if they can create synergies with their existing operations.
It's a development worth watching closely. And it underscores the fact that, Sona Comstar is not a company standing still. They are constantly evolving, adapting, and pushing into new territory. And for investors seeking growth, this can be exciting,
Yeah.
but it also inherently comes with risks.
High risk, high reward. It's the classic investment dilemma.
It is. In the end, it comes down to each individual investor to decide if they're comfortable with that level of risk and if they believe in Sona Comstar's long-term potential.
You've summed it up perfectly. Investing is all about making, well-informed decisions based on your personal risk tolerance, your investment goals, and your assessment of the company's prospects. Hopefully this deep dive has given you the insights and context you need to make those decisions wisely.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So there you have it. We've taken a comprehensive deep dive into Sona Comstar. We've explored their business, their strategies, their financial performance, and the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. We've sifted through, a mountain of information, extracted those key insights, and hopefully provided you with, much clearer picture of this fascinating company.
What I find particularly compelling about Sona Comstar is their willingness to embrace change and their drive to be a leader in, shaping the future of mobility.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to take calculated risks, and they're continuously pushing the boundaries of innovation.
And now that you've been with us on this deep dive, what are your takeaways? What questions are swirling in your mind? Remember, we've only just scratched the surface here. There's always more to discover. So keep digging, stay curious, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.